Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Closing Out 16-17 Adult Education Funds in NOVA webinar. Neil Kelly and Jeff Roberts are our hosts today. We have started a little bit late due to a technical difficulty, so we're going to let Jeff and Neil get started right away.
All right, thank you, Liberty. Let's get into this. We don't have too many people on the line today. We had about, 60 or 70 signed up, so we only have 17 right now. I don't know if people are going to jump on board later or not. But for those of you who are on the line, welcome, and we'll move through this. So I'm going to cover just a little overview of CAPE funding and current status of spending, go over the targets, kind of the timeline, what do you do if you still have 16-17 funds unspent. Then I'll turn it over to Jeff, and he'll walk you through closing out in NOVA, walk you through the step-by-step process, and also give a little refresher on forecasting and targeting of how you can set that up in NOVA as well. And then technical assistance, how that works if you still have questions. So moving right into this, so CAPE funding, 1920 governor's budget, we got an $18 million COLA, which brings our base up to $539,607,000. So that's proposed in the governor's budget, and will be approved if the governor's budget is approved, and hopefully July 1 he signs it, and then we can get that money out. If there are additional increases, we should see that in mid-May, and we're working on allowing NOVA kind of the ability to update the CFAD and for you to go back in and update that if we get additional funds. Kind of like last year when we got that additional funds, but the CFAD process wasn't set up to allow kind of amendments and things like that. So I don't know if that's going to take place, but we're going to set it up just in case, because you never know. And so we'll have the flexibility in NOVA to allow that CFAD to be updated if we get additional funding during the governor's budget process. So let's see. If people can't hear me, am I coming in all right? Okay, so that might be just Russell having some problems. Going on to the next slide, just wanted to update you with our spending. Thank you, Jody. So 15-16 all spent. 16-17, it looks like in NOVA it's 100% spent. At least we've spent over, the 500 million. And then 17-18, we've spent most of it, 92%. And these are statewide totals. So if you dig down into your consortia, I'm not sure if it will vary or not, but you should check to see how your first in, first out is doing. And Jeff will show you how to check that a little bit later. So let's talk about target guidelines. And I'll just kind of walk you through this. So the base funding, like I talked about, when we get our money, when the governor signs the budget, that's effective July 1. And so we allocate these funds with a target of 2 years to spend. So for example, in 17-18, the funds were approved on July 1st, 2017. The target to spend these funds was June 30th, 2019. So that's 2 years. So we're coming up on that 2-year target for those 17-18 funds. Now, if a member can't meet the target of 2 years to spend those funds, you can always complete a corrective action plan in NOVA. It's just entering the information in the text box, filling out that why you couldn't spend it within the 2 years, and then that allows an additional 6 months. Sorry about these slides, a little cut off there. Allowing an additional 6 months, with the final date for activities to end would be 12/31, and that's would be, if it's 17-18 funds, it would be 12/31/8 or Okay, I'm a little confused here because I can't see the screen. But it would be that 12/31 end date. Any questions about that? About the 2 years to spend with the additional 6 months? So for 16-17 funds, they ended, the target was June 30th of this year. And then if you got additional 6 months, activities had to stop by 12/31/18, and now we're kind of in the closeout phase. Okay, so just a little more information. So if you're monitoring these funds, I know some consortia monitor their funds very closely. Some have a 18-month cycle where if you haven't spent funds at 18 months, they reallocate. Some are using the targets that we talked about at a minimum at 2 years. But you should be checking your members' spending so you can reallocate. There is a process in NOVA that allows for allocation amendments, and you can move money among members. And hitting that 2-year target is important in order to keep the first in, first out flow of the money. So, for instance, starting this year in NOVA, each March 1st, members will certify a closeout report for funds issued 30 months prior. So, for example, the 16-17 funds ended the end of December last year. We're closing out by March 1st. 17-18 funds will end the end of this year, 12/31/19, and be closed out March 1st, 2020. 18-19 funds will end at the end of December. Oh, that should be, I'm sorry, 12/31/20, not 19. It will be closed out on March 1st, 2021. So you see how, it's kind of this cycle that we're working on, and it looks like most of us are spending down that 17-18 funds, and I think we'll probably be at 100% by that June 30th date rather than waiting till the end of the year. So I think people are getting on top of that. There might be a few stragglers. That's why it's always good to check and maybe look at your bylaws and incorporate some kind of reallocation process or allocation amendment, and let your members know, even if you're reallocating funds during the year, that doesn't affect their CFAD. So they get the same amount, but this allows people to be a little more flexible with moving money around, so it doesn't harm them the following year, or when we're looking at allocations at the beginning of the year. So moving on to the next slide. So this is just kind of a reiteration of this. Funds issued on July 1st, target spending within 2 years. So we're looking at the June 30th. 2 years later, with the corrective action plan, you receive an additional 6 months. It's kind of being cut off there. Activities must cease within 2 years, 6 months, and that would be that December 31st. And we close out funds in NOVA March 1st for the members, and then it's certified by the consortia March 31st. So what do you do if you have 16-17 funds unspent? So I guess the trick here is, even though these funds end in December, so 16-17 funds ended 12/31/18, you still have 60 days to finalize those expenditures. So January and February, the member could have been, liquidating POs, or, finalizing timesheets, or finding those expenses that might have been spent that weren't entered into the system. So we're giving you plenty of time. And even if a member needs more time, the consortia has 30 days. So once the member submits these closeout funds or closeout report March 1st, the consortia has 30 days to kind of negotiate. So if you did have a member that had like a few $1,000s unspent, or was waiting for a purchase order to clear, or a timesheet or something that was holding this up, you could use that consortia 30-day period up until March 31st to work through that. And so when they submit final, like a 0 report showing all money spent, and then you can certify that. Because next slide will show We don't really want this money back. We don't want to take it out of the region, because if we do recapture unspent funds, it goes back to the general fund. And so we don't want districts to return or pay back funds. So we'll work with you to get those funds liquidated. The only problem is these are 3-year funds, and so it gets a little dicey when we're into April and May trying to liquidate funds when the closeout at the state level is happening starting in April. So that's why we'll find out at the beginning of March or at the latest beginning of April if there's going to be remittance or an invoice submitted, and then we'll wait for payment from that member district to send it either back to CDE or send it back to the Chancellor's office. That's why you should monitor Nova a little more closely and set up those member reallocation processes so no surprises as you get down to the nitty-gritty end of the cycle here. So I'll pause there to see if anybody has any questions before we turn it over to Jeff. And Jeff can might be sharing his screen now while I answer any questions. I hope that was clear. And with all the good spending by members in NOVA, I think we're looking at everyone probably certifying that they've spent down that 16-17 funds via the FIFO method. And the way NOVA has been set up is going to be pretty easy to do. So they're just taking a snapshot that your funds have all been spent, and Jeff will take it from here.
Thank you, Neil. So what I'd like to show you is how you're going to close out. We're calling it Q10 closeout. You'll go to your fiscal reporting screen and you'll navigate down. Make sure you're on 1920 and second quarter. And we're going to work with Alan Hancock today. So you see that a corrective action plan is required because they haven't met their 15% requirement. And the way you can tell if you're set up properly is to look in this column, percent expended of year-to-date forecast. This is lower. It should be at 90% or higher to not have to do a corrective action plan. And once I show you how to do the Q10 closeout and follow your Q2 fiscal report, I'll show you how to set in your budgets the forecasting percentages for that to work out properly. So I'll just make a note here. So now that I've satisfied that requirement, you'll see down here at the bottom of this card that there's an orange alert to tell you that you need to close out your allocation here and file your report. So I'll click the submit button and I'll get an alert here that I know what I'm doing. I'll agree to it, and you'll see that this member has $278,391 left that they're going to revert. So in this instance, you'll fill out some reason about this. And then you'll agree that you've reviewed the fiscal reports for your agency and everything is good to go, and then you will submit. And now you'll see that your Q2 for this member, Alan Hancock Joint CCD, has been submitted and closed out, and there's a confirmation statement here to the fact that there's going to be some funds reverted. Now for Lompoc, I know that Lompoc is good to go. They're all set up properly. They've spent 106% of their forecast, so they're good to go. There's no corrective action required, and we're going to submit a Q2 report for them. Again, we'll agree to the confirmation and submit. And now you see that the closeout modal looks a little bit different. Since all the funds were consumed, there's no funding is going to be reverted. So we just need to agree that we've reviewed everything and we're confirmed and we're ready to go, and then we submit. So since this consortium has 2 members, they both submitted, so now the Q2 can be certified. I'll skip that step. So let me pause and go back and take a look and see if there might be some questions about any of that. Actually, I don't know how to get back to the other window. Neil, I trust if there are some questions, you will send them my way. Talk to me about them.
Yeah, Jeff, you're good. There's no. I've handled a couple of questions, but they weren't related to Nova, more policy related.
Okay, great. So then let me move on then, and I'll show you how to do budget forecasting. Let's see, hide that one. All right, so I've taken the opportunity, so I'm working in my my development environment here, so I'm not changing any data in production, but I'm going to work with Barstow Consortium because it was easy, and what you see here is our budget. I've uncertified it so that I can edit it, and for each budget item that's added, there's a section over here called Quarterly Expenditure Forecast, and there's a little helper text here that recommends you do 15% for Q1, 30% for Q2, 45% for Q3, and 60% for Q4. Now, budgets and fiscal reporting are cumulative, so you gradually have to do more. So as you can see for this budget item, the percentages have been set at 25% across the board. And per the guidance, they should be 15, 30, 45, and 60. So the second budget item, this is set properly. So I'm going to go ahead and set these to the guidance. All right. Let me check the others. That one is the same. This one is the same. So if you set all your budget forecasts at these percentages, again, cumulative over the 4 quarters, when we get to fiscal reporting, that percentage year to date that we talked about will be calculated on all of your expenditures in the same manner. So for the Allen Hancock Consortium, I didn't edit these budgets. They were set slightly differently. So if you do that, then you'll see this percentage here get calculated properly, and then you'll get your corrective action properly displayed if you haven't met your 15% minimum. So I'm going to submit and certify. Just be patient. This is run on my local computer, so it's a little bit slower than you'll see in production Nova. Any questions come up so far, Neil?
Yeah, but I'll ask you one while we're waiting. So for going back to the closeout, what's the easiest way to see if anybody's going to remit money? I mean, there's probably, if you go to the FIFO chart, you could see if anybody hasn't spent their 16-17 funds, right?
That's right. So let's take a look here. Go to Fiscal Reporting. See the FIFO report. Click on View Report. And now we're seeing everything at the state level. We need to look at 17-18, correct?
Right. Or 16, it would be 16-17, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if we can pick a consortium. Allen Hancock. So here we go. So you can look at the table. Oh, on the consortium level, it looks like they have done it. So no, this is not the proper year, I don't think.
So maybe try 17-18.
Yeah. There we go. I can't remember the number that we reverted, but here it is. This was it. It was no, I thought that number was in a couple 100,000 range. It was only for one of the members, though. Maybe I'm remembering it wrong. Do you remember, Neil, what that number was?
For Alan Hancock?
Yeah.
No, not off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
All right, no worries.
But we did have a question from Peggy. She's a little confused. She says, "I don't get those percentages because it's more than 100%?" Question mark.
It's not, though. It's cumulative. So if you're required to spend 60% of your budget for the year, which I believe that's the case, right, Neil?
Right.
You do 15% the first quarter, and if you're going to do another 15% the second quarter, then you would input 30% because it's cumulative. That would be for Q1 and Q2. And then in Q3, 45% because you're looking to do 15% per quarter. And then Q4, you would put 60%. And this is one of the questions we get a lot through the help desk is, people are trying to input actual numbers into Nova for Q2, for instance, and they need to put in their cumulative numbers. So Nova will copy the numbers you put in for Q1 as a starting point for Q2, and then you need to add your actuals to those numbers and enter the total of those two quarters for Q2, for instance. That's why sometimes if you didn't spend anything in Q2 and you try to put a 0 in a field, and the previous quarter there was a $5,000 expenditure in that field, Nova won't let you move forward because you need to put a number greater than 5,000, greater than or equal to 5,000.
So we did get a question from Jody. She says, "I'm a little confused about which year we should look at in Nova when we're doing the 16-17 closeout." So maybe walking back through that closeout step one more time to show them might be helpful.
Okay. You should be looking at fiscal year 18-19 because you're filing your Q2. Let me see if I can find another one that we could do here as an example. Let's see what we can do here. So Q2 reports are due now, right, Neil?
Correct, March 1st. Yeah, March 1st.
Okay, so Nova knows that, and it shows you that your current fiscal year is 18-19. So you're going to report on this Q2 for the current year. And then if you look at the pop-ups, so this is the usual one you get when you're ready to do a fiscal report. And this is the additional confirmation. So is indicating in the dashboard, your member agency expenditures reported in Nova indicate you have expended all funds for 16-17. So then you just agree to that, and by agreeing to this and moving forward, you have just closed out your 16-17 year. Because as Neil was talking about, it's 30 quarters, right, Neil?
Right, or 30 months,
30,
right.
30 months, yeah. And then you agree. So now you're closed out and you have reverted no funds because you spent them all.
So hopefully that helps, Jody. See it a second time. We have a question from Kathy. She says, "Will it show the 16-17 carryover that was brought in from the other system to Nova on the FIFO report? As you may recall, we closed out the MIS system and then added the carryover funds to the 17-18 allocation."
Yeah, those carryover amounts are included in the dollar amounts that you'll see on the FIFO report or the FIFO chart. Neil, you probably remember we spent quite a bit of time towards the end of last year getting those things all sorted out for everyone.
Right. And then, Kathy, if you ever get hung up, you can always contact TAP and they can assist, or if it gets complex, then they can contact Nova and get that resolved. Marianne says, "Does it make sense to make the percentage change now to our forecast because it would change our over-under expenditures for Q1, which has been certified?" And that's her question. Or should she wait?
I would say that's a policy decision, Neil. It's up to you guys on that one. I think she can go back and uncertify the budget, make those adjustments, and then recertify it, and then have those percentages set properly, or set to your recommendation.
Right. I mean, I would say for that, we don't want a lot of rework on uncertifying because then all the members have to go back in and recertify. If things are looking pretty good and, you're just playing it forward, so maybe they didn't meet the whatever, or maybe you didn't put the percentages in for Q1, you can add in the 30% now for Q2 and the 45% for Q3 and the 60% for Q4. So, and then just keep in mind, for subsequent years, get that in place at the beginning. So if you didn't do it now, I don't know if you have to do the rework. I just think it would be confusing to people.
As long as the percentages don't, you can't go over 100% for the whole year. So say if you it should work. If you do 30, 45, and 60, you should be good, as long as you didn't do more than, what would that be, 40 for the first quarter.
Okay. So hopefully that helps. And then Peggy asked, if expenditures exceed the annual project budget, say a budget of $15,000 in the 5,000s, and they actually spend $72,000, do we put a note explaining why the change and how it still aligns with the overall consortia plan? So, I mean, you can go over a budget item. Is that correct, Jeff?
Yes, you can.
And then it just goes over. Do we have to do a budget change to reflect that, or they can go in and change their budget? So if they had, 50,000 and they spent 72,000, or they had 15,000 and they overspent it like quite a bit, they can go back in and change that, or do they have to change that?
I think you can still submit if you're over budget. You get a little warning over here that says, hey, this number's outside.
Right. And I guess that would be up to the consortia because if they're certifying it, they could certify that they're over budget, or they could go back and fix it, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So it just depends on the consortia, how you're working with your members, and whether you want to have everything perfect. You want to have these red dots and a little more confusion. I mean, NOVA is flexible because all we're looking at is spending down that budget. You guys at the consortia level have to make sure people are following their plans and the budget aligns with the work plan and those kind of things. So it gives you some discretion there.
Yeah, so let me restate. I may not have been too clear. You definitely can't submit expenditures that are over your budget. So you'll see that there are two here that are indicated that are too high, and that puts us over what the total budget was. So, but you can for an individual item.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, and then Marianne asked, and maybe she got the answer, but we'll see. Does this mean we have to complete our Q2 report for 18-19 in order to close out 16-17? And I think you said that's part of the process,
It is
right?
part of the process.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll get the, NOVA knows that it needs to submit that Q2 closeout at this time, and it'll provide you with those, the two different modals based on whatever the situation is, if you have money left or not.
Okay, and that's all the questions for now. So I'll just remind people online that we have Jeff with a live screen. You can pretty much ask all kinds of questions, and he can walk you through it. Jeff, feel free to take them through whatever else you plan to show today.
Okay, that was it. I think it's pretty straightforward, and hopefully it's easy for you guys to take care of as well.
Okay, I see Sherry's typing. This is your chance, guys. I mean, we don't have too many people on the webinar. Now, how often do you have a live NOVA expert like Jeff to answer your questions? So I would take advantage of this. So let's see what Sherry has to say. If anybody else has questions, I mean, if you want to ask about other stuff in Nova, this is your time as well. It's kind of a open chat for Nova. So Sherry says, and she jumped on a little late, so this might have been answered, but that's okay. If our members had no 1617 remaining funds, is there still a closeout that we have to do? And I don't know if that means they spent it all or they never received 1617 funds. I'm not sure of that question, but maybe Jeff can answer both.
Yeah, if you didn't receive any 1617 funds, then I'm pretty sure you weren't required to do fiscal reporting in 1617. So that would not allow, you wouldn't have to do a closeout for that. But if you had money from 1617 and you expended it all, I don't know if this other, so the one we did here for, what is this, Barstow, for Baker Valley, these folks spent all their money, so the closeout dialogue that came up basically just had a single checkbox for you to agree that your numbers are right and go ahead, and it shows that there's no funds to be reverted. Let's see if I can try Barstow. I messed with Barstow, so I might have screwed up a whole bunch of things here. I'm not seeing a submit button. Here we go. Let's try these guys. So this is the usual agreement. Everything you're reporting is accurate. Here we go. Good. So this one, allocation year 1617 closeout. They have expended all their funds. So this is all you need to do. You'll see this modal. You click on the checkbox that say your fiscal reports and everything are good to go, and then you just click submit, and you're done. It's that simple.
Okay, and Sherry, the whole reason why we're going through this closeout is hopefully everyone has spent all their money, and so this just certifies that we've closed it out. We've kind of used to do this in the old system, and have you do the closeout, go through about 3 or 4 steps and approvals, and this is that same process. It's just a lot easier in Nova to do that closeout process, because we have to make sure that because there's a shelf life of these funds, we have to tell finance and state controllers that we've spent all these funds and that there's no funds coming back. So this is kind of that exercise. And it looks like we have spent all the funds, but we just have to go through this certification process. So yeah, and Jeff, so each member takes care of their own checkbox. Is there any consortia level certification for the closeout, or is it just certified by the member person that goes into Nova?
Yes, so it's the same thing with a regular Q2. Once all the members have submitted, then they'll be able to certify for the consortium. So there's nothing else, and you'll see a message here once everybody does it in the top right corner here in certification, say 1617 is all closed out and all the funds have been. I forget what it says exactly, but there's a message in there that lets you know that everything is closed and frozen.
Okay, so the consortia lead will still have to do like they do with the other expense reporting. They will have to finally certify it. And so that's when they're completely closed out, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. And then this is a question for me. When do we need to close out data and accountability funds? We will not be doing that in Nova, correct? That is correct. Data and accountability funds will end June 30th, 2019. And then the closeout, we'll have a second report or a kind of a final report of expenditures due by the end of July, and then we'll have the closeout or final report due August 26th with your promising practice, and that will be the end of those funds. And so we didn't want to add those funds into Nova and make it more confusing because they're on a different timeline. And so, but going forward, if we do get any additional funds, we have the ability to add those into Nova. So, okay, any other questions? We still have some time. And Jeff, if there's anything else you want to show us today, I don't know if there's like a number one question that always comes up from the Nova users when they contact TAP or contact product ops.
Yeah, I think it really has to do with the cumulative nature of fiscal reporting is probably one of the most common questions. So you'll see here, well, I did this one already. So here's Q1 for Barstow CCD. Let's see. So they've got 5,055 for that number. And their Q2 capital outlay, they put 556, so it is greater. But if I put this at 554, it's going to turn red because this number is lower than the previous quarter. So the idea here is that it's cumulative. So for Q2, you need to total up what you spent on Q1 and add it to what you spent on Q2 and enter those data points in these fields.
Okay, so that's how we did it in the old system. So it was cumulative and not individuals. So that I guess they'll just have to get in the habit of continuing to do that.
Right.
And we have had a lot of turnover in at the member level and at the consortia level. So a lot of retraining on this comes up from time to time.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's mostly new people who are just coming into the system that that aren't aware of that or unsure how to do it, and then they get straightened out. It gets communicated, and they're able to take care of it from that point forward.
Right, and then Peggy asked, and this is a question to me: how do we find out if all my members spent out their data and accountability fund? So those funds came into the fiscal agent in your consortia. So whoever received those funds, and we can find out for you, Peggy, because you're relatively new at your consortia. So the accounting staff that received those funds should be tracking. There was a budget involved that's on the website. There's a work plan. They've already filed one report. So there should be a way, and if you need access to that old system, we can get you the passwords and the logon that you can go and look at those funds, and then talk to the fiscal agent about getting updated on, when it comes to July, when you have to do that expenditure report, you can get that information from them. So feel free to contact TAP, and we can give you the logons and passwords. And then you can go right now onto the website under Foothill Consortia, and you can go down to Documents, and you can look at the, it might be under 1516, you can look at the work plan for data and accountability and get a better understanding. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Even tech people, if you have questions for Jeff, or I think Holly had chimed in to say that the number one question was cumulative. If you guys want Jeff to show anything, but we might be all out of questions. Okay, Sherry's typing. We'll give everybody one last chance. It's pretty simple. All you have to do is check that box. What about glitches we find in Nova? So yeah, Jeff, there's been, I guess with all the activity for the program area reporting, there's been some glitches or slowdowns. I'm not sure if that's related to the amount of users that are going online, but we're seeing just this week some people getting kicked out or slowness. I don't know if TAP has more details on that, but they've shared those kind of things with you. Any idea of if that's just related to increased user usage or something else?
I think it is related to increased usage, especially with the mad rush to complete all these things this week. So I appreciate everyone's patience with that. We are making some changes over the weekend, over the long weekend this weekend, to our environment to beef it up a little bit so that we can handle that a little bit better after everyone comes back to work on Tuesday.
Okay, and just so you know, since you guys are a small group, and this is a private webinar, right? So if you're still working on your program area reporting, because we have a holiday on Monday, and because the researchers aren't going to start extracting this data until later next week, you really have this weekend and the holiday to finalize things. If you're waiting for things, it's not really an extension, but we won't be start pulling that data or looking at it, to do the legislative reporting until later next week. So just that it's not going to be Friday COB today at 5 o'clock. We're going to close down Nova. You still have the ability to go in over the weekend if you have some loose ends that you're trying to tie up, or if a member gets something at the last minute or is trying to calculate some numbers or something like that. You do have a little flexibility with that. And then Nova will work with the researchers that are going to be pulling this data, and so you'll be working with them next week to get that data. So as soon as you can, if Monday, Tuesday is okay, get that data in before those dates. Let's see. Sherry says, now you tell us. Well, that's because this is an intimate conversation, right? Peggy says, so since TAP knows those of us who are having problems, they will communicate that we get a pass. Yeah, okay. We will work it all out. We're one big happy family, right? So, and then Jeff, so if people are going to be working over the weekend, will the changes that you're uploading or affecting into Nova, will that delay or hamper any of them that are going to be working on the program areas this weekend?
Yeah, so there will be a brief interruption on Sunday at 3 p.m. We're going to target a 30-minute window to do what we need to do, but we expect it to take much less than that. So we will probably put up Nova is down for maintenance page while we do that, and then take that away when it's finished.
Okay, great. So you're gonna have to take a break, everyone, on Sunday afternoon. Maybe go out and jump in the rain puddles or something. Hopefully, none of you have to be working through the weekend. But if you did, just be aware of what Jeff said with Sunday afternoon. So let's see. And Holly said, TAP will communicate any changes on Tuesday with those who have been working with that are having problems. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you to Jeff for walking us through Nova. That was really exciting.
My pleasure.
Exciting for me because I'm a Nova. I like to be a Nova geek, even though I don't really understand it at times. But I like that we're using the system. So when I get an expert on the webinar, it's always nice to see how easy it is to use. So Great. Thank you, Jeff. And then thank you, Liberty and Holly, for helping us today and answering all those calls throughout the week. So feel free, everyone, to continue working with TAP. Liberty has been on, for a month now, or maybe 6 weeks, I want to say.
That's about right.
Okay, so she's up to speed and probably answering a lot of your emails as they come in, so we appreciate that. And we'll definitely catch some of you next week. Jay Wright and I will be doing the low-hanging fruit on Wednesday next week. It'll be mostly Jay with a little bit of me. I'll be covering some statewide data, looking at participant rates and enrollment. And then Jay will look at how you can get those people that are coming in to enroll but not making it to 1 hour of instruction time, or those ones that make it to 1 hour but don't make it to 12 hours, what we can do about that, how you can track that into TOPS Pro, and how you can get people to persist and keep those people in your system till they get to that 12-hour mark, and usually they stay in there and show outcomes. So we're going to cover that on Wednesday, And we look forward to that. And I'm sure there's other webinars next week that I forgot about. Liberty, if you have a
Yes.
chance, go ahead. Okay.
Thank you, Neil and Jeff, for this informative and engaging webinar. We want to remind everyone that this webinar and the recording of it will be available online on the California Adult Ed website. So as you were mentioning, the next webinar, actually we have one using assessment results to inform instruction. That's coming up on February 19th. So there's a link to register for that in the chat box. And after the webinar ends, there will be an evaluation link that's going to pop up on everyone's screen, and we want to encourage you to complete that evaluation, as it really supports our efforts of continuous improvement. I am going to extract any Q&As from this chat box that might be relevant and also put those on the website. So thank you both for this great webinar, and have a great day.
Thank you.